All right, men, welcome to today's episode of Strong Men, Strong Marriages, Emotional Affair, How to Recover If My Wife Had One. So this is a common problem that I see the guys call in with and ask questions about, and something that I can help guys get through, right? It's difficult, but you can overcome it for sure. Um, so my name is Mike Fraser, MD. I'm a psychiatrist and marriage coach, and I help high-achieving Christian men have more intimate marriages. So some wins for the weeks from some of the guys in my program. So guys are getting more of that physical intimacy. Their wife likes to be around them physically because now there's someone that's stronger, more attractive, mentally, emotionally caring and concerned. Okay. When you're spiritually, mentally, emotionally in a better spot, people just like to be around you physically. Okay. That's what it takes. Okay, increased confidence. As guys are practicing these skills, they're getting more confident in them. So that now they know how to communicate better, how to talk with their wife better, all of that. Okay. So even after the program, right? I'm working with guys now who graduated or having these amazing lives and marriages, and we're looking at continued growth in different areas of their lives, which is super fun and super cool. Um, and for me, the win for this week is just really fulfilling my own dreams for my family of going on vacations, doing fun things together, things that I pictured doing, and now we're doing them, which is really great and amazing and just a fun memories and experience for all of us. So last episode, we talked about what to do if you had the emotional affair. Okay. That'll still be useful to review. Um, this episode, we'll be talking about what to do if your wife had an emotional affair. So, again, if you had the emotional affair, you should definitely be listening to this one to understand her perspective on it, right? But you want to listen to both sides to get it. Okay. Again, the easiest definition for me, right, is that right now your wife feels more emotionally connected with someone else and she's hiding it from you. Okay. That's the emotional affair. Okay. So signs, again, from Very Well Mind, this was a website. The way they define it was sharing intimate information is an emotional affair sign. It's kept secret and there's sexual attraction present. Okay. Usually that's what gets guys upset, right? Is that there's some flirting or some kind of sexual element to this. Okay. So what men usually do is they start kind of feeling like, hey, something's weird. My wife, she seems like she's with this guy a lot or talking with this guy a lot. So they ask about the other guy, right? A lot of times they get the answer, oh, he's just a friend. He doesn't mean anything. Why are you being so sensitive? Stuff like that. Okay. So then most of the guys that I talk to, they have done some kind of spying, right? They've gone to their wife's phone or their computer or whatever, and they found some kind of message that is inappropriate. Right? So a lot of times they find those things, they confront their wives about them, right? And their wife might admit to it or she might not. She might still say, oh, you're just being sensitive or whatever, right? Or sometimes what their wife will do too is kind of turn it around on you, She'll say, oh, you just weren't there for me. I had to go here because you weren't there for me. Now, all of this is to say, right, there's no good reason, right, that someone will be unfaithful. Okay. Even if you were a jerk, right? It's her choice to go outside of the relationship. Just like you didn't have, like last week we did, if you had the affair, there's no excuse for you to have an emotional affair. There just isn't. Okay. That's a breach of integrity. You're out of trust, right? There's no world in where it's just fine to do this. Okay. So just don't blame yourself all the way for it, right? Don't say, well, she did this and it's my fault. It is partially your fault, and we'll get into that, but you didn't force her to have an emotional affair. Okay. No one forced her to. She chose to do it. Okay. So don't let her make it all your fault and not taking her responsibility. She does still need to take some responsibility for having the emotional affair if you do want to get through it. Okay. And that's something we'll get into as we go along here. But so going through the emotional affair stages. So again, we talked about this last week, but these are like steps off of a cliff. So what happens is your wife starts to feel disconnected mentally, emotionally, and sexually from you. A lot of times that's because you've done the mosquito cycle over time. You're trying to get something from her. You're not really listening. You think you're better than her. You think you deserve sex. She just gets tired of it, right? And so then she goes and she finds another guy that's showing some interest in her. Okay. He doesn't seem to be as mosquito-ish, although he probably is, right? Because look, if this is a guy who is having this kind of connection with a married woman, he's not in integrity, right? It's going to create the same problems down the line. But again, this is just kind of what happens. So, your wife, she's feeling disconnected from you. Another guy shows some interest in her. They start talking, right? She starts sharing some things. She shares her hopes, her thoughts, her dreams, her fears. The other guy listens to them, right? He probably has better communication skills than you, or at least he's using them better than you have been, right? So she starts feeling loved. She starts feeling valued. She starts feeling important by this other guy, right? Some sexual feelings may start to develop after that, right? And now the texts become a little bit more flirtatious, a little bit more sexy, right? Maybe she's even sending some pictures or something like that. Okay. So, and then she starts hiding these interactions from you because she kind of knows something's off here. I wouldn't want anybody to see this. Okay. And then, she minimizes them. Oh, we're just friends. There's nothing going on. And she might even believe that a little bit, right? Oh, I would never, leave my husband. This is just something that, makes me feel good and I'm doing it. So, and she's definitely minimizing them too if you bring it up to her. Okay. So then some, flirtation starts happening, right? She starts wishing you were more like this other guy. Okay. She complains about you to the other guy. Oh, my husband's like this and this. And he's like, oh, yeah, he sounds terrible. I would never treat you like that. Right. And then she's like, oh, yeah, you really wouldn't. Of course he would, because, he doesn't have integrity if he's doing this. So eventually she starts to prefer to spend time with the other guy over you. Okay. That's what starts happening. Right. And then she starts using communication with him as an escape from the marriage stress that she has. Okay. Eventually, she wishes she was with him instead of you. Okay. Then the emotional affair might turn physical, or it might turn into a separation or something like that. Okay. So eventually you divorce. She starts a new relationship, but then the same thing happens again, right? Because she didn't learn the skills either that create a good marriage. Okay. So what you're doing now if your wife's having an emotional affair, right? You're spying on her almost for sure, right? And based on what you've heard, you're either kind of silently suffering, right? You're super anxious. You're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? I've got to win her back. You start being like extra nice, but you don't bring anything up. You're like, you're just spinning, you're kind of like maybe hinting at, oh, like, what'd you do last night? And she was with this guy, but she says no. And then you're just like, oh, well, I guess you're right. I guess, I guess I should just trust you. Okay. All these are not great things to do. Okay. The silent suffering, it puts you in high anxiety, which is very unattractive, feels terrible. Okay. Or you're getting mad at her, right? You're confronting her, you're shaming her. How could you do this to me and the kids? What kind of example is this, right? How are we ever going to get through this? How dare you do this to me? Okay. Maybe you're mad at the other guy, right? And, going to confront him or something. Okay. So you're feeling angry, you're feeling hurt, you're feeling depressed, right? So again, maybe you're confronting the other guy, which is not necessarily the worst idea. Okay. And also you're trying to win her back, right? So part of you's mad at her, right? Part of you also feels like, I want her back. Part of you feels like, oh, maybe part of this is my fault, especially if she's like kind of good at turning it around on you and you're the kind of guy that's kind of willing to just take that. You're right, honey. I did do bad and you can do whatever you want, which is the nice guy part of the mosquito cycle where it's hard for you to set boundaries and ask for what you want. Okay. So all of that doesn't work. Okay. So the silent suffering and trying to win her back for sure doesn't work, right? Getting angry with her definitely doesn't work. These are all things that generate emotions that she doesn't want to be around. Okay. So instead, here are the things that you need to do. You need to grieve, right? You need to understand this is hard, right? Your wife is involved with another guy. She seems to choose this other guy over you. It's not easy, man. It's super, super hard. And it's okay to feel bad about this, right? So the grieving process, this was Kubler-Ross came up with this. So the first stage is denial. Okay, so basically saying this isn't happening. So this is where you ignore it. Okay, you just pretend like it isn't happening at all. You just say you're mistaken. You just accept her lies about it. Like, oh, I guess, yeah, I guess, these texts really, when you sent him this naked picture, I guess you just really, wanted to feel good about your body. It wasn't sexual. Like, guys will do this. Denial is powerful, right? It's a strong thing. Okay. Then you can get anger, right? It says, how could you do this to me? How could he do this? Right? I'm gonna take, this is unfair, right? Anger. Okay, so denial and then anger. Then bargaining. Bargaining is where you're like, oh, I just need to do something different, or maybe things were different, or it's just kind of like figuring, just thinking to yourself, what can I do? What can I change, right? How can I make things different, better? Okay, so next stage is depression, right? Look, it's okay to cry about this. Right? It is sad, right? You might feel worthless. You might feel unloved. You might feel not good enough. Okay, all this might remind you of past hurts and abandonments. Okay, it's all normal. It's natural. It's okay to feel these things. And in fact, the more you let yourself feel them, okay, and even attach some purpose to these things, that's another big thing, right? So you're going through this thing, you're feeling abandoned. What does that help you do? What's some purpose you can take out of it? Well, for one thing, especially if you're a Christian person, you understand Jesus went through our suffering so he could understand us. Okay, so you going through this suffering, it helps you understand other people. Okay, could even be your wife, but definitely other people who have been through something similar. Okay, your kids, when they get hurt this way, you're going to understand them, right? So it helps you understand other people. It makes you a better person because you understand what it means to be hurt. Now you can support people that are also hurt. Okay. So then acceptance. Acceptance is kind of getting to a new normal, right? You kind of have gone through these stages of grief and you're okay. So again, it's denial, pretend like it didn't happen, ignoring the signs, anger, getting mad that it happened, bargaining, oh, like I wish things would be different, depression, feeling sad about it, and acceptance, new normal. It's not a linear process, right? One day you might be denying it, and then the next day you might have depression. One day you might have bargaining, and the next day you might have acceptance, right? And then you go back to denial. It doesn't go straight through this. You're going to have all these kind of throughout. It takes time. So just like let yourself have time. The more you try to speed it up and say, oh, I don't want to feel this anymore, right? Usually the longer it takes. Let yourself feel it, attach some meaning to it. That'll help you process it completely. Okay. So what we really want is healing through this, and ideally to be able to create a stronger marriage even after an emotional affair, which is 100% possible. Okay. So to restore your marriage after an emotional affair, you need to reinstall the three foundations of a marriage, and those are trust, communication, and intimacy. Okay. So one of the big things you need to understand is that to make your marriage work, your job isn't necessarily to destroy this other guy that your wife's having an emotional affair with. It's to be a better choice than the other guy. Look, if your wife is a woman, okay, she's going to have options available to her of guys that are interested in her, especially sexually. Just the way the world works, guys. So she's going to have other options. So your job is to be a better choice. Okay, that's it. She's always going to have other options. Your job is to be the better choice. Okay, you're not going to go out and like put every other guy out in the world in jail, right? Or keep her away from every other guy in the world. Okay, that's not an effective strategy. It's not going to work. Okay, so the first thing you need to do to restore trust is just take a very complete and honest inventory of yourself as a husband. Okay, what have you done that has made her decide this, right? What have you done that has left her feeling like she does need to fill this outside? Now, again, it's not to say that she is correct in going outside, but it's just saying, what did I do that made this? What did I do that was unattractive enough that she had to go look somewhere else? Okay, or that she chose to look somewhere else. So ask yourself, how have I been acting in negative, unattractive ways that would make my wife want to create emotional distance from me? Okay. So maybe that's being needy. Maybe that's basing your worth on her. Maybe that's the mosquito cycle, right? Maybe that's being dishonest. Maybe that's losing your temper. Go back to the last episode about if you had the emotional affair, because a lot of the same stuff's going to apply. Okay. So are you dependent on your sense of worth from other people, especially your wife? The answer is probably yes. And that's probably what she got tired of and went outside of the marriage to, find someone that didn't have that. Although what she found was someone that does, because they don't have much integrity to be doing this. She's going to create the same problem if she pursues this relationship. So next thing you do, you step into integrity, right? You own and work to correct your own side of this. Okay. The other part of this is you do confront your wife and, about what you know, and you work to restore trust. She's going to have to restore trust. So I like to use the example of a brick house. Okay. Now you have to restore trust by showing, hey, I'm not going to be a mosquito. I'm actually going to listen to you, all of that. But she has to restore trust too. Okay. So, It has to be rebuilt. I like to use the example of a brick house. So when your wife had an emotional affair, it's like she knocked down that brick house. Okay. So you can't trust her right now. You're always going to be on edge, wondering, is she talking to this other guy? So the way that trust is rebuilt is by making and keeping promises. That's like putting a brick down in that brick house of trust. Okay. So, when she makes promise and keeps it, that helps rebuild trust. This is a personal decision between couples, but what I recommend for as an option for couples is to use like spy type software. So there's one like MSpy and Spy Bubble. These are things that will let you. So when your wife says, no, I didn't contact him, you can actually look at her phone and say, okay, yeah, she didn't. Now, there's always the fear there that she just worked around it somehow. And that's just the consequence. She laid down the seeds of mistrust. Okay. And now that's the harvest is, you don't trust her. Seeds of dishonesty, that leads a harvest of mistrust. Okay. Seeds of honesty, that leads a harvest of trust. So you need to verify as much as possible. That's what lays the bricks down faster, is if she can say a promise and then you can verify, yes, it actually happened. Again, trust works both ways. So you also have to step into, okay, if you're going to change and actually not be so needy and desperate and whiny and trying to get her attention and affection, you need to be following through on that as well. Okay. So again, it takes time and it takes complete honesty to do this. I worked with guys where unfortunately, they find out about emotional affair, they kind of work through it, and then their wife does it again. Okay. And at that point, trust is destroyed again. Okay. And now you've got to make a decision. Are you going to continue this relationship or not? Again, we'll get to that. But it is on her, right? She does need to restore trust. So the next part, once you start restoring trust, right? You're like, okay, like she's actually going to do what she says. I can start. Maybe that brick house is building up. Maybe we got a wall here. So then you got to start improving communication. So emotional affairs, they definitely come from poor communication in the marriage. Okay. So, and this is huge, guys. Huge, huge, huge. So ask yourself, how good are you at listening to and really deeply understanding your wife? Almost like you're not good at it. If your wife's having an emotional affair, you're not good at it because that's what she's getting somewhere else that she wasn't getting in the marriage. Especially if you have kids, she has every reason to stay in the marriage, right? So you have not been doing a good job listening and deeply understanding her. You just haven't. And probably you've been doing the mosquito cycle too, and that's making her look somewhere else, right? Okay. Also, how often do you ask clearly for what you want instead of complaining or not bringing it up at all? Okay. You're probably not very good at that either. Okay. How good are you at getting to win-win agreements when it comes to money, sex, in-laws, parenting, religion, housework, all of that? Probably need some work there too. Okay. So again, when communication is low, mentally emotional intimacy is low, and that's what can lead to emotional infidelity, emotional affairs. Okay. So again, if you don't both feel like you're winning in the marriage, it can be easy to start looking somewhere else. All right. And that all is based on communication. Can I listen and understand? Does my wife really feel deeply understood by me? Okay. Do I deeply understand her? Do I express myself really well? And can we get to win-win agreements? Okay. These are required skills for a great marriage. You need to be able to do it. Okay. Then the last step is really creating intimacy. So trust, communication, and intimacy. That's how you get through emotional affair recovery. And intimacy, guys, it comes from courage. Okay. So it's the ability to share what's important to you, even and especially if your spouse doesn't like it. Now, if your wife had an emotional affair, she was low on emotional intimacy. Or, so one of two things. Either she didn't really tell you that she was bothered by the things that you were doing, of not listening to her or whatever, or she told you enough times and didn't see any change that she was like, well, it's never going to change, so I better find somewhere else. Either way, she's out of integrity by looking somewhere else, right? Because the most honest thing for her to do would have been, hey, you know what? There's another guy that's interested in me. I find him attractive, and a big part of that's because you don't listen to me. Okay, that would be intimate communication. That's real intimacy. It would be for her to say something like that to you. Now, would that shake things up? 100%. Would you be upset? Yeah, but it's in integrity, right? And that can lead to now you being able to build communication, intimacy, and trust without this big knockdown of the emotional affair. Okay. So again, when it comes to intimate communication, so her being able to be intimate with you, but look, emotional affairs, they don't, people will say I'm finding intimacy in an emotional affair, but really what they're finding is validation. So your wife, she's finding validation. She's finding someone to listen to her, to say, oh yeah, I agree with the things that you're saying. I think you're great. I think you're wonderful. And it feels good, right? But that's not intimacy. Okay. That's validation. Intimacy is when you're able to have enough strength in yourself to be able to say something that is important to you that your wife might not like. So in our marriage, my wife has done great about being able to bring things up that are difficult. Stuff about religion, her saying she had questions about our church was really hard for me to hear, but important for her to say, and led to really great connection between us. She revealed something about herself she knew I wouldn't like. And again, that's real intimacy. She revealed something even though she knew I wouldn't quote unquote validate it or accept it or quote unquote accept it. She just knew she had to share it, right? To be herself. Okay, with parenting recently, same thing, sharing about my anger, and that's really turned into a really great thing for me to control my anger, right? With sex, that was more on my side, telling her just that's important to me. That's something that needs to happen in our marriage, right? And because of that, now we have a great sexual connection. So again, like that's the price, right? It takes courage. Okay, it takes courage to have real intimacy in marriage. Emotional affairs, they're all about not having courage. Okay, it's about running from the problem instead of addressing it maturely. Okay. So again, holding true to who you are and staying in it until you get to win-win agreements. Okay, when you can do this, you get a deep respect, a deep love, and a sense of we can do anything together. Because my wife and I have gone through so many difficult things, right? Like we feel like we can get through anything, and that's how I feel. We have these arguments, we have fights, right? We bring up hard things, but we get through it, right? And that's real intimacy. The other thing that happens, so you get this unbreakable intimate marriage, but it also leads to passion, right? It creates sparks to make a fire. So I shared this on the last episode, but pretty much any romantic comedy that you watch, right at first, the girl and the guy that end up getting together do not like each other, almost always, right? And also, almost always, there's kind of like this nice guy that agrees with everything the girl says. And she's like, I should like this guy, but I don't. Why? Because he doesn't have intimate communication, right? He doesn't have courage. He doesn't have courage to challenge her and say things that are actually important to him that she might not like, right? That's intimate communication. The guy that will do that, sure, she might not like him at first, but then she eventually respects him, and that creates passion between them, okay? So that's what happens when you actually have intimate communication, right? And then you add on top of that fun, flirting, being able to do those skills. And now you've got an amazing, incredible marriage. Okay. So, important question. What if she refuses to work on it, right? You come to her, you're like, hey, look, here's what I found. I know you're having this relationship. It needs to stop. It's not important. Like, that can't happen for us to have a good relationship. Okay. Again, you still need, and she's like, no, I'm not going to work on it. No, you need to change. I don't need to change anything. You need to change, right? You still need to evaluate your side of the problem, right? You need to see, okay, like, where am I lacking in these skills of trust? Do I have real self-confidence? Am I trying to get that from her, right? Am I a man of my word? Can I manage my emotions well? Can I manage my thoughts well? If you can't, yeah, you need to step that up either way, okay? You need to figure out what lessons you need to learn to become a stronger, more attractive man and a better choice, right? So that's what you have to ask yourself. What lessons do I need to learn to become a stronger, more attractive man and a better choice? Okay. And then you build those strengths and skills, right? You take the effort to actually do that. So you build those strengths and skills. And once you've built them, right? If your wife is still choosing somebody else, you've got to decide, do you want to continue the marriage or not? Some guys might take the approach that's like, hey, look, she can explore these other relationships and then choose me if she wants, right? And I'll still say married to her. Some guys will take the approach, hey, this happened once. If this happens again, we're done, right? There's not necessarily a right answer here. It's just what feels in integrity to you, okay? So it's not an easy choice at all. I recommend lots of prayer, getting some coaching to help you through it. It's hard, right? It's hard to know what to do. But when you become a guy who is a good choice, you will create a good marriage, whether that's with your current wife or with somebody in the future. That's just what happens. Like when you are a guy that is trustworthy, that has good self-confidence, that's based in God, right? That can manage his thoughts and emotions, that can communicate expertly, that's able to share himself even if his wife doesn't like it when it's in integrity to him. You will create a great marriage, okay? Whether it's with your wife now or with somebody else, you just are going to, okay? So you need to commit to that no matter what. So in summary, if your wife had an emotional affair, okay, be kind to yourself, right? Let yourself grieve. Let yourself go through those stages: denial, you know, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, so you can get to healing. Let her know what you know. You don't need to hide it. Don't suffer in silence. Bring this to light. Take an honest inventory of how you need to improve as a husband and make those improvements and commit to that, even if she doesn't. Okay. Just say, hey, look, I did some things to contribute to it. I'm going to fix those. Okay. Whether I choose to stay with her or she chooses to stay with me or not, like I need to figure out what makes a marriage really work and relationship work. Okay. And then you ask her to work together to restore trust, communication, and intimacy in the marriage. Okay. If she had the emotional affair, she does need to do some work. She just does. All right. And then if she won't, pray, get coaching for help on what to do. Again, there's not a one size fits all answer here. There's kind of two paths to take. One is to say, okay, if she won't work on it, we're done, right? And that can come from a place of strength. It can also come from a place of strength to say, okay, she won't work on it, but look, I've got to build myself up. I've got to be the good choice here. And for me, that's just the way I'm going to approach it, right? I'm going to stay true to her. Maybe we get separated. Maybe I'm not supporting her financially or whatever, but we're still going to stay married because that's how I want to do it. Okay. So, it's up to you. You can set boundaries all along that spectrum of I'm divorcing you to, I'm just going to create some financial or emotional separation between us or some physical separation, right? To, we're just staying and I'm just going to work to be the good choice and she can explore this other relationship. That's kind of the whole spectrum. And you got to figure out where you land on that and what's in integrity to you. Okay. So you can learn how to do all this to work through an emotional affair. If your wife was unfaithful to you in my program, okay, at strongmarriages.com. Click on work with me. You'll fill out an application and then we'll review that on a call together. See if you're a good fit. This is a hard thing. This is one where I 100% recommend getting coaching and not trying to do this on yourself because it's a tough one, and you need some support through it. And I'd be happy to be the one to help you if you are a high achieving Christian man who is looking for help here. So, all right, so it's a process, guys, but it can be done 100%. And I've worked with guys who've been able to turn things around in amazing ways. If you go to my page on the results part, you can see Aaron's story is very much kind of like this. So, all right, man. So again, strongmarriages.com. Click on work with me if you want to work through an emotional affair and get some coaching on it. All right, stay strong, men, and I'll see you next episode.